Marcy, Skylight, Gray, Cliff, and Redfield done. Now the long walk back to the lodge. 3:55 a.m., just signed in. Santanoni Range, let's go. The wind is whipping here in the Seward Range today. Just finished the Macomb slide and my legs are on fire. Well, I fell victim to the floating logs again. Made it to the top of East Dix. Peak number 3 of 5 for today here in the Dix Range. Avalanche Pass. On top of Rocky Peak Ridge. It's like a hurricane up here. Rain and wind here on Tabletop. Whiteface, number 6. Muddy day here on Street and Nye for number 7 and 8. Sunny and blue on Haystack. Algonquin, up in the clouds, number 18. Gothic's number 22. Panther, number 38. Allen, number 45. 7:12 a.m. Big Slide, Adirondack 46er. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. June 8th, 2019. It was a Saturday afternoon, the nicest 4-day stretch of weather we've had in the last couple months here in the Adirondacks, since it rained for pretty much all of May and basically all of June, as it tends to do. These last few days were a true breath of fresh air, but I wasn't able to get out on the trail yet. I was leaving home and on my way back to New York City to begin my next job, and I decided I couldn't pass up this weather another day, and I had to at least get some hike in. We've had 4 straight days of bluebird skies and I've been on 0 mountains. I just had to hit the trail. So on my way out of town as I headed towards the Northway from Lake Placid, passing the Lodge Road and those fantastic sunny Colden and McIntyre Range views, passing Mount Van Hovenberg before being greeted by the hundreds of cars parked along Route 73's Cascade Trailhead, driving with my hands 10 and 2 on the steering wheel to remain entirely focused so I don't end up hitting a clueless hiker walking in the 55-mile-per-hour road with no thoughts or cares that cars are going to be whipping past them. Through Keene, and then just after Keene Valley, I stopped off to hit a popular small mountain that I've passed hundreds of times in my life, but I've yet to hike, Rooster Comb Mountain. So I pulled into the Rooster Comb trailhead just after 1:30 in the afternoon. The parking lot was half full, plenty of places to park at this hour in the day. The sun was beating down pretty relentlessly on this parking lot, of course. The last time I parked here, when Josh and I hiked the Upper Great Range, I came back to my car reading over 100 degrees inside. So, thanks to the sun, today I was able to try out my brand new windshield sun reflector, so I was pretty stoked on that. See if it actually helped. So I threw it in my windshield, grabbed my gear, closed the door, and started hiking at 1:40 p.m. Rooster Comb, it's time to have some fun. Rooster Comb Mountain stands 2,786 feet with an elevation gain of just under 1,800 feet on this 5-mile out-and-back trail. The hike itself is a gentle, consistent climb, making a great choice for a quick afternoon hike or a day trip for new hikers with fantastic high peaks views on multiple summit ledges. A smaller Adirondack mountain that boasts big Adirondack views. The trail begins with a nice long wooden bridge over a little marsh before coming to the trailhead register where I signed in at 1:43. The sun was shining, wind was non-existent, and the birds were chirping. It was going to be a great day out on the trail. The first quarter mile of the trail is a flat approach, beginning with the wooden bridge, and then a dirt trail running along a stream before coming to a small pond. The pond has some short little trails around it at various points, but just follow the foot trail signs and you'll be on the correct path. So I kept walking around the left side of the lake on a nice flat dirt trail with plenty of roots to step over and not trip on, the pond on my right, and lots of small leafy hardwood trees all around. There's even a couple benches along this part of the trail to sit on and take in the mountain views above the trees. At the end of the pond, the trail passes another wooden bridge to the right that goes to the other side of the pond. Just continue straight here towards Rooster Comb at this point. A few steps later and you'll come to another wooden bridge over a stream, and at this point the trail will begin its very consistent, steady climb all the way to the summit. The Rooster Comb Trail is probably the most consistent trail from top to bottom that I've experienced yet in the Adirondacks. I'd say 3/4 of the trail is exactly the same from a terrain and scenery standpoint. A nice, soft dirt trail, well maintained, that winds and weaves its way through a big, very open forest filled with large pine trees all over the place. The trail has plenty of hardwood trees with bright green leaves on them, but not nearly as much as most mountains. In fact, I found it to seem kind of like the opposite from usual. Most of the time, the lower elevation areas are filled with the hardwood trees, and the higher up you get, the less of those you see and the more spruces and pines and trees with needles you'll see. Though I found this mountain to be the opposite. Mostly big pine trees for the first 3/4, and then the higher up I got, it switched to more bright green leafy trees. Different than most mountains. So I passed the stair section. I climbed up, and it's a little flatter up here. But the forest is still very open. Not a lot of trees with leaves up here. So you can see quite a ways. And I'm passing a good amount of people coming down. As I go through some mud. And continue following this nice dirt trail, very defined. Very well marked. With the yellow trail markers. And it looks like this trail has had a lot of trail crew love given to it, which is nice. Props to all you trail crew people out there. Love your work. The trail is a delight. Nice soft dirt, plenty of roots to deal with, but nicely maintained with various rock stairs put in here and there on this big open trail. It had a great vibe. Almost a textbook I'm in the woods type vibe that you'd see in movies. Big wide pine trees, brown dirt root covered ground, a not too thick forest with the sun shining through the trees, lighting up bits and pieces of the mountain floor with varying light patterns throughout. The smells of pine and fresh air. It was a great vibe on the trail today. And since the trail gains elevation at a very consistent, steady rate, it's easy to figure out the proper pace for you and maintain that speed throughout the hike. I always say when you're hiking, it's best to go as slow as you need to go so long as you never need to stop for a break. Figure out what the right pace for you is and maintain that pace and always be moving forward. So often people go too fast and burn themselves out, and that's not the way to go when hiking, in my opinion. Slow and steady wins the race, but as fast as you can go without having to stop. However slow or fast that ends up being. As I continued my way up the mountain, I was passing a number of other groups coming down, which was what I expected given the cars in the parking lot and the early afternoon start that I had. Lots of people on their way down the trail. None of which had much to chat about, surprisingly. Usually you'll have a quick little chat back and forth with hikers here and there today, but it was all business today. Hello, thank you, and so on. That sort of thing. But that's cool. Since I usually start hiking very early in the morning and don't tend to run into people until 4 or 5 hours or more into my day, I'm usually the hiker who is very excited to chat with someone when I cross paths on the trail. Though today was different, since it was the early afternoon, of course. I continued my way up the Rooster Comb Trail, through the open forest, along some large rock walls at times, then back in on an occasional switchback type manner. More very well defined and well marked dirt trails while the large open forest was all around. About a half a mile into the hike, I came to the first trail junction of the day, marked by brown wooden signs with the typical yellow lettering, the first of 2 different trail junctions to Snow Mountain, 1.8 miles away to the left. I'm approaching a trail sign here. Trail Rooster Comb, 1.8 miles to the right, Lower Wolf Jaw, 4.3 to the right, Route 73 is 0.7 miles behind me, and the trail to Snow Mountain to the left, 1.8 miles. Right we'll go to Rooster Comb after we step through this mud. Making good time. We signed in about just under 15 minutes ago. Gone 0.7 miles in about 12 minutes. Pretty good. And so far up ahead of me, open forest, windy trail, soft trail, spruces and pines. So I followed the signs right, 1.8 miles to Rooster Comb and 4.3 miles to Lower Wolf Jaw. Speaking of Lower Wolf Jaw, one of the most challenging hikes in the Adirondacks, if not the most challenging, the Great Range Traverse, which takes you to Marcy, Haystack, Basin, Saddleback, Gothics, Armstrong, Upper Wolf Jaw, Lower Wolf Jaw, Hedgehog, and Rooster Comb, will either start or end with Rooster Comb, depending what trailhead you begin at, be it the Rooster Comb trailhead or the Adirondack Lodge. So that's 8 high peaks and a few other small mountains, 25 miles and over 17,000 feet of elevation gain. It is a monster day for sure. Sounds like it would make for a fun podcast episode, actually. If that sounds fun and you end up doing that hike, do a lot of research. And bring a lot of water because there's really nowhere to refill along that traverse. But back to Rooster Comb. So I went right at the first Snow Mountain Trail junction and continued up the trail. More of the same, open forest, consistently climbing while never really leveling off at all for more than 20 feet or so, while the scenery around me continued to remain the same with the open forest, the soft dirt trail. Oh yes, actually, one thing did change around this point. The black flies. Dear Lord. Around a mile into the hike, the black flies hit me like a tornado. They hit and they hit hard. And all of a sudden, they were just relentless, swarming all around me as I continued hiking up the trail, swatting them nonstop to no avail. And no, of course I didn't have a bug net. Why would you even ask? Of course I don't have one. I actually still don't, despite this hike. I should really pick one up though. For the next half a mile, they refused to give up. It was rough. Then all of a sudden, as quickly as they came on, they were gone. They just eventually were done with me, I suppose. As fast as they came upon me, they left just as quickly. Phew. That was truly awful. At this point, I made it up to an extremely welcomed flatter stretch for maybe 50 yards, a great spot to catch my breath. The trail here was also extremely wide, probably wide enough to fit a car, maybe even two, as the mountain ran down to my right and up to my left. Just made it up over this one little ridge, and now I'm walking along the slope here in a very wide trail, wide enough you could easily drive a car on it. But it's cool. Textbook woods all around me here. Hard to sneak up on somebody in these woods since it's so open. Got a wooden plank here to go over this little swampy section. As the trail winds around to the left, continuing up. We're making good time. Cruising on up this trail. Shortly after, I crossed over a little stream, one of the only streams of the hike, and then walked up the trail along the stream for a short period of time. I continued passing different groups sporadically as they made their way down the mountain with little to no small talk today. Continuing up this well-defined dirt trail, following the yellow trail marker discs, I passed a large boulder with a few trees wrapped all around by their roots. You see tree-covered boulders like this pretty regularly in the Adirondacks, and I find it to be quite a sight. A giant boulder with trees growing around it, almost engulfing the boulder with its roots. I find it to be a nice visual analogy of life. Some days you feel like the rock, being completely engulfed and taken over by the roots and life and all that it entails. And then other days we're the tree, doing the taking over of life and taking charge and being in control now. There's a lot of lessons one can learn from or relate to visually on the trail, which is yet another nice element of hiking. The trail continued to climb up the mountain, only now I was surrounded by more beech trees and maple trees, with big bright green leaves instead of the huge pine trees from earlier. And with that, the ground was covered with leaves all around. Around 2 miles into the hike, I came to the stretch of trail that I nicknamed the Land of the Giants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 huge boulders all on their own. As I get to the trail sign here, Rooster Comb, half a mile to the right, Route 73, 2 miles behind me, and Snow Mountain, 1.1 miles to the left. So, half a mile to go as we go between these huge boulders. This one on the left, probably about 12 feet high. This one on the right, enormous, probably 15 to 20 feet high. And then as you look up the trail, tons more that are a good 10 feet plus. Very cool little section here. If I was an animal, I would probably build a little den under that boulder right there. Very cool. Once arriving at the second trail junction for Snow Mountain, 0.5 miles below the Rooster Comb summit, the trail runs through a sea of giant boulders. Boulders that are easily 10 to 20 feet high, depending on the rock. And there were dozens of them all over the place. It was a pretty cool spot. At this point, the trail runs up and to the right, going across the slope now for a little while as it climbs up to the ridge to another junction. The spur trailed 0.1 miles to the right, overlooking some nice views of the valley below, hence its name, and the summit of Rooster Comb to the left, 0.3 miles with the Route 73 trailhead 2.2 miles